Let's out loud.
Okay. All right. So, activist, any member of the city council out either to vote against the proposal or to abstain. But if all the members abstain, the matter will be decided by the city's voters. So, at least one member of the city council should vote against the proposal.
All right, sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen, but you must have had it pulled up as well. I have it pulled up for us now as well.
Okay.
All right, so sorry, I was struggling for a second. Okay, so what is our conclusion here?
So, at least one member of the city council should vote against the proposal.
Excellent. And then what kind of question is this?
It is a sufficient assumption.
Excellent, because we have if and assumed, right? So what is the goal of a sufficient assumption question?
So it is to provide support for the conclusion.
Yes, but it's even stronger than that. Like you kind of just described a strengthened question.
Yeah.
A sufficient assumption question is like we're looking for what would guarantee the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I said it's hot outside, therefore we should get ice cream, is that a valid conclusion?
No.
Like I think so in life. I'm like, yeah, I want ice cream, but technically no, right?
Yeah.
So, but if this was a sufficient assumption, my sufficient assumption would be whenever it's hot outside, we must get ice cream. Because if I added that in, it would guarantee that conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to predict something before we even go into the answer choices here. So right now we say like any member of the city council ought to vote against the proposal or to abstain. So we're saying that they either should vote against it or they should abstain from voting.
Mm-hmm.
But if all the members abstain, the matter will be decided by the voters. So at least one member of the city council should vote against the proposal. What would Garrett like? What are they assuming here?
That
Like
that city
why should they
voters,
vote against the proposal? Like what don't they want? What clearly do they not want to happen?
the city voters to have a say.
Yeah, or they don't want it not necessarily to have a say. They don't want it to be decided, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so we think in our common sense world, we're like, well, yeah, we don't want that to happen. This makes sense. We like this conclusion. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, we don't know like why actually we don't like this conclusion. Sorry. We would think that I would be against them. Like, no, like let the city voters decide. But
Right.
we're on the activist side. So what could we say that would guarantee that one person should vote against the proposal?
Would it be something like if the city voters uh are allowed to vote for the proposal, they'll vote for it? Is that something?
I would say keep it simpler. I'd be like, we should do everything in our power to
Okay.
not let it be decided by the city voters. It
Okay.
sounds silly and overly strong, but technically that would work, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at these answer choices. And I want you to tell me for A, love it, leave it, or hate it.
If all members of city council abstain from the vote, proposal, city voters will definitely decide in favor of the proposal. I think that was the one I chose, so I want to leave it for.
Okay, so if all the members of the city council do not vote, essentially,
Yeah.
city voters will definitely decide. Okay, so they will decide in favor of the proposal. Does this guarantee the fact that at least one member should vote against it?
I guess not, because it doesn't really.
You're assuming that we don't want this proposal to pass. But
Yeah.
that's not what we're not trying to get to the point where we should do anything to prevent the proposal from happening. We're to say our conclusion is at least one member should vote against it.
Okay.
Do you see? But we'll leave A for now so we can compare it to the correct answer.
Okay.
What about B?
Proposal should not be decided by city voters. I don't think so. No, that seems like to not. I feel like, I mean, because the way I think about sufficient assumption is I think of like two different ideas mentioned with both in the premise and the conclusion, and the sufficient assumption is something that is so strong that connects both. So I just feel like that's
Okay,
why
that
B
is
was right.
like LSAT definition of it, kind
Okay.
of. But our goal at the end of the day is just to guarantee this conclusion.
Yeah.
And if it were true that the proposal should not be decided by the city voters, would that make it so that at least one member should vote against the proposal?
I guess so, yeah,
I
because
like it. I like it better because it's like, because it says, but if all of the members abstain, it will be voted by the city voters.
yeah.
But if we're not wanting it to, if we're not, but if we're not wanting it to be decided by the city voters, that means that not everybody can abstain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the voters, any member doesn't, can either vote against, or they ought to vote against or abstain. If they don't vote, if they don't abstain, then what did they do? They voted.
Yeah.
So I like B, but let's go on to C first.
Uh, no members of the will vote in favor of the proposal. I don't think that like
That doesn't matter.
yeah, it does. It's just even if it was true, I think it wouldn't make.
Even if it, yeah, even if it were true or not true, at least one member should vote. Yeah.
Yeah. If not every member of the city council abstains in the vote on the proposal, the matter will be decided by city voters.
I think you skipped over the not.
Oh, will not be decided. Uh, yeah, I mean, like, I could see why this tricks you.
Does that matter? Because this is where we have to go back to what is our conclusion, and our conclusion is at least one member should vote against it. So what this
Oh,
is if not every member of the city council abstains in the vote on the proposal, so that means that at least one, right, voted,
yeah,
then it will not be decided by the city voters. Okay, cool, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't get us to this fact where we're trying to get to that there should be one that votes against the proposal. Right?
yeah,
Like, just saying like if they do, it's not going to be decided, but it doesn't show us like, well, should it be decided by the city voters or not? Like there's no opinion. It's not helping us at all.
yeah.
All right, what about E?
If one member of the city council ought to vote against the proposal, the other member should abstain in the vote. I think that's not necessary,
Not,
or
no,
that's
it's
not
not
even.
relevant. Excellent.
Yeah,
And so then when we go back to two, or we saw like A, what happened is like we're not showing that if all members abstain in the vote, the city proposal will definitely vote in favor of the Fraser. Or... Yes. So how do you feel about this question?
um, I think it's like my own intuition of like what I've seen before and trying to like do pattern recognition. I think I have this weird. I think I'm trying to unlearn this weird pattern of like trying
I
to find
think
a really
you, I
complicated
think
position.
you learned I think you learned the basics, which were good, but we have to now like kind of get away from just a systematic approach. I mean,
Yeah,
we have a system of how we want to have a systematic approach of how we approach questions, but we want you to count on your common sense and like your thought process
yeah,
versus just memorizing stuff and applying it. Does that make sense?
yeah, exactly.